Now, each of the justices is a world unto their own. They have their own chambers. They have a budget. They have a law library. They have the computers. They have clerks that are generally top law school graduates who have clerked in the courts of appeal and been recommended up, this is up, yeah, to the Supreme Court. And so they'll typically have 2 or more, and they will, some of the justices have their clerks participate in what's called a cert pool, certiorari pool. And they get together, they review the petitions for cert, make recommendations to the justices, what should be granted, what should be denied. I think Justice Clarence Thomas does not participate in the pool, wants to decide them on his own. Okay, so what will happen is, when cert is granted, or even when the stuff comes to these courts are what are called hot courts. We call them hot courts because when you go there for oral argument, the judges will have read everything about the case, everything that's been filed by you and your opposition, as well as their clerks, and they have clerks in the district court too, clerks will do bench memos. They will discuss what the precedents are, and here's the way the law has been. And so they'll come, all 3 courts will have bench memos written by the clerks to sort of guide them. But basically what will happen is, not in the district court, the Court of Appeals and SCOTUS, you got a podium and you have 3 lights. You got a green light, a yellow light, and a red light. And let's say you're given 30 minutes aside, and you can decide how you want to do it. I'm going to take 25 minutes for my principle and 5 minutes for rebuttal. So when it gets down to a minute, when your time is up, it'll go from green to yellow, and when it hits red, you must stop, even if you're in mid-sentence. I've had that happen. Here, never been there, here. Okay, so they have this conference, and then the judges go back and they start drafting opinions. They with their clerks, will draft an opinion. And you may go through several drafts before they release it and circulate it among the 9 justices. What they're looking to do is they're looking to find consensus. They're looking to find at least 4 more votes that will agree with that. And some of them will say, I'll agree if you change this, etc. And the dissenters will always have a right, they'll circulate theirs. And finally, when they get 5 votes, that's when the case has been decided, because that's what needs, 5 votes. Now to grant cert, you'll need 4 votes. So we get four people on the court say, yeah, I want to hear that, and they grant cert. Sometimes after that's done, and they grant cert, and they get the petitions, and they get the briefs on the merits, they'll decide, we really shouldn't have done that. So sometimes you'll see, rare cases, you'll see the writ of certiorari is hereby dismissed or set aside as having been improvidently granted. Go figure, right? They just decided, well, we made a mistake. Okay, forget it, go home. Now, when they had 8 justices, we were missing a justice, and the court is 4-4, and the vote is 4-4, the decision below stands as affirmed, and it'll say, affirmed by the evenly divided court. Okay, so that's the way that works. Now, I have a chart that's in here that shows who's on the court, who's appointed, what the votes were, etc. And it goes through the last one, including Kavanaugh, right? So we all saw the Kavanaugh debacle, and it's basically become a political circus. It didn't used to be like that, but we live in strange times. Okay, so I talked about original jurisdiction, admiralty cases, having to do with the ship, maritime liens, seamen's wages, all sorts of stuff, and then cert, and then I've given you all this whole business oral argument conference. At the conference, when they're just the justices in there, the junior most justice, which in this case would be Kavanaugh, is responsible for bringing coffee in and answering knocks at the door. So, here is the current composition of the court and their ages as of this time. You'll see I've put them in descending order. Ginsburg, Breyer, Sotomayor, Kagan on the left, Thomas, Alito, Kavanaugh, Gorsuch on the right, and Roberts sort of in the middle. Okay, so Ginsburg, as we know, is having a lot of health problems and is not likely to last for another 2 years, as long as Trump is in. And Breyer has talked about retiring. Okay. The reason I put, and the Fs are not grades. The Fs mean they were members of the Federalist Society. And there's a handout about the Federalist Society. And I admit, I am a member of the Federalist Society. It's called the Federalist Society for Law and Public Policy Studies. And it was formed in the law schools and then also among lawyers. And we have a chapter here in New Hampshire. It basically is to be strict constructionist, limited government, and there's a lot of stuff about the Federalist Society there, about what its principles are. So what happened, what used to be when a person was going to be nominated or considered for appointment to the Supreme Court, they would go for interviews before a committee of the American Bar Association. And the American Bar Association would then issue a report and say they were highly qualified, not qualified, forget about it, whatever. The American Bar Association, a number of years ago, a couple of decades ago, began shifting from the basic core values of it's basically a professional organization to further the profession and everything else. It started getting involved very much in politics and shifted to the left. The result of which is that many of us, many lawyers, are not members of the American Bar Association anymore. I haven't been a member for many years. They actually, when I was sworn in New Hampshire, they gave me a free membership for a year. And they kept on asking me to renew, and I kept on sending them emails, nasty emails. They never responded, and finally they stopped bothering me. So in any event, most of the presidents, particularly the Democratic presidents, would listen to what the ABA had to say. Now, what Trump said was, when he was campaigning, before he was elected, he said, I will appoint people to the federal courts who have been vetted by the Federalist Society. And this was done by there was a lot of support for Trump and the Republicans in the Federalist Society. And there is, among the handouts I gave you, is what is euphemistically referred to as the list, as it currently stands. The list of, these are people who the Federalist Society has said, after Gorsuch, it has Kavanaugh on there, but you'll see Kavanaugh has been appointed and confirmed. Now look at Amy Barrett. Now, I don't know if any of you saw Barrett's confirmation hearing for her appointment to the Court of Appeals. Dianne Feinstein and I think Kamala Harris on the Judiciary Committee said something to the effect, basically came down very hard on Barrett because she's a Catholic and an observant Catholic. Okay, so if you look at the court now, there is no religious test in the Constitution for any federal office. And what used to be is that the office, the Supreme Court was all Protestants. Now, there is not a single Protestant on the court, believe it or not. There is 1, 2, 3 Jews and 6 Catholics. There's one particular deceased justice who hated blacks, he didn't call them that, he called them something else, Jews and Catholics. Wouldn't even talk, wouldn't hire them, wouldn't even talk when the first Jews were appointed to the Supreme Court, wouldn't even talk. When they were giving the opinion of the court, he would walk out. He would be turning over in his grave if he saw this composition now. So there is no religious test, but the Dems on the Judiciary Committee have undertaken, in effect, a religious test. The latest thing is that some of these nominees, heaven forbid, they're members of the Knights of Columbus. Oh my God. I'm not a member of the Knights of Columbus. I'm not Catholic. But I'm Jewish. But I'm probably the most conservative libertarian Jew you'll ever meet.
I think Feinstein said of Barrett, quote, the dogma is really thick with you.
Right, yes. Okay, so you get, these are, Charles Kennedy is from Florida. He's a real good state Supreme Court justice. He's the only one I know. The only one of the justices I've met personally was Alito. And Alito told the story. I met him personally at a reception we had for him in Fort Lauderdale. And it was the Italian-American something society. And he said that they told him, the prep people from the White House said, don't look at the newspapers, don't watch TV during the confirmation process. You're just going to be so angry. And one of the things that happened in the Judiciary Committee at those days was they actually accused Alito of not being a real Italian. So after he was confirmed, the ambassador to the United States from Italy brought him a certified copy of the baptismal certificate of his father from the village in Italy from which he came. So it's a strange route. Roberts is in the middle, and I said F question mark. There's always a question. We thought Roberts was a Federalist, we're not sure. It's uncertain whether he was really a Federalist or not. And the reason I put Roberts in the middle is because of what he did in the Obamacare case. He originally drafted an opinion that would have thrown out Obamacare because it was a penalty imposed for not buying something. And then he changed his mind to make it a tax and upheld it. But there were still fragments in the opinion left over from when he was overruling it. So you really don't know how he's going to go. Kavanaugh, of course, replaces Anthony Kennedy. I love old sayings. There's sayings, and every old saying that you've heard of has some basis in real world. So one of the sayings is, don't make a federal case out of it. The reason is when you get into federal court, it requires a lot more work, and a lot of lawyers are not comfortable practicing in federal court. The rules are different there than, the procedural rules are different in the federal courts than they are in the New Hampshire state courts. Many states have adopted similar rules, but New Hampshire has not. And it requires a lot more research and citing of federal opinions and things like that. So it runs up the clock, it runs up the money, so it gets to be very expensive, so that's why they say don't make a federal case out of it. So one of the sayings, of course, Ronald Reagan said, one of the most dangerous sentences in the English language is, I'm from the government, I'm here to help, right? And I guess Mark Twain or someone like that said, or was it Will Rogers said, no man's life or property is safe while the legislature's in session. Well, some Supreme Court watchers, myself included, have said that one of the most scary things on opinion day when they read the opinion from the bench is when the clerk would announce, the opinion of the court will be given by Mr. Justice Kennedy, because you had no idea how it was going to come down. He was supposed to be a conservative. He was going to be a conservative like David Souter from New Hampshire was supposed to be a conservative. And we see how that worked out. Souter reportedly said he was in tears and almost resigned from the court when Bush v. Gore was decided, because he was so upset at the decision. In any event, so that's the list. And let's go to my outline and make sure. Okay, the current court. Okay, so right now, 4 on the left, 4 on the right, 1 in the middle. Possible. Okay, you're going to have 4 here, and then let's suppose Ginsburg goes to the hereafter, and then you're going to have 5 here without Roberts. That's a majority. That will change the complexion of the court for decades, for generations, as long as we keep Thomas healthy. If Ginsburg and Breyer go, both, this is going to be a conservative court for a long time, very long time. Sotomayor and Kagan are relatively young and somebody at one of my presentations said, how come we don't have term limits or age limits? Well, I read you the Constitution during good behavior for life. We don't have that. It would take a constitutional amendment to put that in there.
Croc TV.